Okay, Rob.
Thanks very much, Kath. That's great. Well, good morning or good afternoon, colleagues, wherever the time is where you are. This is a second recording of the initial orientation webinar for the Professional Development Award that we're running the second cohort for. The reason we're having to do it again is that the original recording was beset with really substantial difficulties, such that we don't think it's really very usable in its current form. So the risk now is that you won't have the richness of contributions from John Peters, from Steve Outram, and indeed from Janet Strivens. It's just myself, Rob Ward, here at CRA. The upside, I guess, is that you won't also have all the problems of trying to make sense of the original recording. Having said that, we'll give you the link to the original recording in a minute, so if you want to, you can have a listen in to the earlier efforts. In terms of starting off then, this award was developed very much as a bottom-up kind of process. At the first National Tutoring Seminar, part of that meeting was devoted to thinking about practice in these areas and what constituted emerging practice, good practice, practice we wanted to promote. And out of that, a set of learning objectives was developed and distilled, and through a process which lasted the best part of the year, that went through the SEDA accreditation process, and now it's part of the SEDA professional development framework. And very much accords, therefore, to the SEDA requirements in terms of values, in terms of generic learning outcomes, and in terms of specific learning outcomes that link directly to the area of personal tutoring and academic advising, which is purposefully chosen as a broad focus to reflect the range of practice in different institutions. That's where we started out, and as we've gone along, of course, tutoring has become a significant dimension in institutional thinking. It's significant in the context of the TEF, the notion of targeted support for learning, and we've had some debates about whether the older model of pastoral care, a personal tutor kind of arrangement is still the one to be focusing around, or whether institutions are developed systems and talking much more about personalised provision rather than personal provision, and there's some debate to be had about that. In addition, very recently, last week in fact, we've had a report put out by the HEA which looks at the UK engagement survey data and highlights the links between engagement with staff, interaction with staff by students, and career skill development and so on, but also highlights that those things are reported as being in the minority in systems, which suggests we've got a fair distance to go in terms of development within HEIs. Two links at the bottom of that page you've got. The first of them is to the website, which contains all the documentation for the award. We'll come back to that in a minute or so. And the second relates to the original recording that you can get access to if you so desire. The award, as we've developed it then, and we'll look at some particular aspects in a minute, is quite complicated. Particularly we'll be looking in a minute at the issues around assessment and support, but in terms of its structure, a couple of things to say about it really. One is it's a model which seeks to develop practice. It's not just about reporting existing practice, so it's got this notion of reviewing practice, planning for improvement, doing something, and reporting in a reflective account on the outcomes. And there are three ways into it, and I think everybody in the cohort will be in one of these three contexts. There's the first two are, if you like, directly CRA supported. And that's for individual candidates from individual institutions, therefore just one person per institution, or a group, but receiving their support from CRA mentors. And in that case, the top of that slide gives you the structure, which is that we'll be providing from the CRA team individual support, and named tutor. And our job, in a sense, is not only to mentor, but it's also to provide formative feedback. So we'd be happy to respond to your initial work, your continuing work, and so on. Our job is also to make sure there are opportunities for peer collaboration, and we'll be talking a bit about that as we go along. And last but not least, we'll give you feedback as we go, and that will include work that might need to be developed further in order to meet the requirements of the award. In addition, as I've indicated already, there's a range of materials, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. It's on the CRA Weebly site. It's a developing resource. Please make sure you add to it or suggest additions to it in order that we can develop it for everyone. And as part of that site, we've got portfolio pages, structures, which will be useful, I think, to you in submitting your assessment elements or elements for assessment. Then there's an alternative model which some institutions are looking at, which is where the mentoring is provided locally. That allows institutions to reduce their costs, but we're still interested in making sure you have a consistency of experience. So we're including in that model access to this briefing, we're including access to the Weebly website and the portfolio elements, and we're including formative feedback from one of the team, just to make sure that, as it says here, there are no nasty surprises at the point of submission. So that's the structure in terms of support. In terms of moving into the resources, that's what the current website looks like, and you should have received from Kath in the office a way of logging into this website. It's a password protected site, so once you've logged in once, you will need to set a password for yourself, and it contains a range of resources. It provides access, hopefully in a simplified way, to literature, and it will also link to institutional websites which give you access to policy and practice within HE. So that's the focus of the website. Please make use of it. It's intended as a resource we can develop, which will be useful to us all. In terms of the assessment tasks, which is what I guess people are particularly focusing around, there's a section on the Weebly site which does address that. Just to point out that there are a range of ways of handling this. You can devise your own means of reporting on the assessment tasks if you want to, as a Word document. You can use the rubric and the portfolio pages that we're providing here, or you can import those and submit those to us, or you can provide access for us via a portfolio system that your institution is using. In cohort 1, we've got several models. We've got 3 of those models. Some people are using their own recordings in their own way. Some people are using the structure we provide and making use of that as a Word document. And some are using their portfolio system in their institution, providing you can give us access. So we have to be able to see that portfolio. You have to be able to share it with us. Both the mentor and the assessors, including the external assessor, because the scheme has an external assessor. And you'll also see there the different tasks listed. We will, after this webinar, send you a link to the recording and an outline of the assessment tasks. But if you go into the Weebly site, you can get access to each of them. And each of them is described in some detail, and a portfolio page is provided for you to make use of. Task 1 then, as I indicated, is around this review element, the notion of focusing on the roles you currently undertake, the institutional policies that underpin those roles, and some discussion by you with reference to the literature as appropriate of what seems to be working well and maybe areas for development. There's an issue there about moving on from that to a planning process, identifying your professional development goals, your priorities, your directions, and setting that in terms of SMART targets as a basis for the tasks you're going to tackle over the period of the award. There should be 4 of those, so we're now into tasks 3 to 6. They're the doing tasks, and as it says here on your screen, 4 activities, which 2 should relate directly to work with students. Now, students can be broadly defined. So, for example, if you have a staff development role or a tutor development role, your students might be staff colleagues, they might be student mentors in a particular peer mentoring scheme, they might be individual students for whom you are the personal tutor, the academic advisor, or who work in other ways with you to develop their thinking and their experience in HE. And that can be in a group setting, as it says, or it can be on an individual basis. But it's actually taking place during the current academic year, which is the period covered by the award. And again, there's a rubric for each of those tasks. So 2 of them at least, therefore, with students. 2 can be tasks which relate to other activities that take practice forwards. Then there's a final task, and that has 2 elements to it, really. The notion of a reflective final account. That's the review and present element. Pulling things together, looking at reflection on problems and how they were overcome, and thinking about what comes next. So there's a future dimension there too. And also including with that, the self-assessment checklist, which gives you a chance to review your portfolio and make sure all the elements are present. So you're handing that to us with what we're calling here the pre-submission version of your portfolio. And the aim there is for you to be clear that everything is present, and for us to be clear when we review the portfolio that we can find the evidence quickly and we can confirm your judgments, or we can come back to you if there's anything else to develop. As I mentioned, you should have received a login for the site, so you will be able to get into these once you change your once you log in and set yourself a password. You will have access to this site. So those are the assessment tasks, and also related to that, we're suggesting some indicative timeframes for the completion of these tasks. They're indicative because obviously everybody's working pattern is different, and you will have a better idea how feasible this is from there on. But we're suggesting, if at all possible, you get the first 2 assessment tasks, the reviewing and the planning, done by the 17th of December. We will have some webinars to support you in that, and there'll be an opportunity for what we're calling micro review. So you can send in your thinking, your ideas, for some feedback from your mentor as part of this process. You won't get necessarily chapter and verse, but you will get some feedback which is going to confirm that this is going in the right direction, or maybe suggest areas for further development. Just a word here, as it says, if you're working with the CRA model, it's a cohort as an individual, you choose whether you share what you write with others beyond the assessment team. We're not requiring any sharing within your institution. So if you have concerns about policy, if you have concerns about your own practice in that sense, that would come to us, and it won't go beyond the assessment team and yourself unless you choose that. And that's quite an important one, because we want you to be honest about how things are going as far as you feel able to. Then we've got the doing tasks, tasks 3 to 6, 4 tasks, ideally by late April, if that's feasible. And again, we'll be running some webinars to support that, and there'll be an opportunity for micro review. We just completed that with some colleagues on cohort 1. Then we're looking at the portfolio checklist and final review, an opportunity to submit the portfolio in its near finished state in the middle of May, and that would allow for an individual conversation with your mentor if that's appropriate at that stage. And we will expect, therefore, by the end of May, the final submission, and hopefully by the end of June, we will have considered those, we've completed the assessment process, and we'll all be ready to award the necessary award of the SEDA Professional Development Award to you. That's the framework. It may not be possible for everyone to meet that, but we're here to help you get the most out of this award and to move to completion as soon and as appropriately as is possible. Two further points on a couple more slides. What's the role of the mentors as a mentor team if you're working with CRA, or a local mentor if you're working with a local model? Our job, I think, is to support you in those four elements at least. I've said some or all of. I think actually it is all of, really. We want to help engagement with the tasks. So if you have issues about what's written on the Weebly site, or you can't really see how this fits to you, please engage with us on that. We've got a job which is a kind of nudging job. There's a lot of work going on about nudging activities from the Behavioural Insights team, particularly government at the moment. Our job, I think, is to remind you of things, to progress chase, to gently but firmly, hopefully, help you wake up at least occasionally thinking about the award and what you need to do to achieve success within it. We want to convene meetings, and I'll come to that in a minute. We want to provide online support where appropriate. And last but not least, we're here to provide feedback as the award develops and as your portfolio develops too. So some next steps. Please access the Weebly site, log in, set up your password, have a look around, see what's here, make suggestions for what isn't here that we can include, and we'll be very happy to do that. We'll be setting up in the near future the first online clinic. This is an optional lunchtime probably session, and I've put here for your reflected upon questions. It's things that you want to ask about, having looked at the site, having heard this recording, having worked out that none of it makes much sense at all and you need some clarification, or simply for confirmation that you're in the right territory. And we'll be notifying colleagues via the JISC mail list, which are all included on as soon as we can about that. There will be at least 2 initial online support opportunities, one around the issue which we've started to flag in this briefing, which is why does this matter now? And hopefully John Peters will be leading on that. And then we'll be looking at institutional perspectives based on some work which is recorded, which we can provide a link to so you can access it directly. But we'll also have a facilitated online session around those institutional perspectives, and hopefully Janet Stribbons will be leading on that too. Finally, and importantly, we'll be allocating mentors to each of the people that are supported directly by CRA, and we hope to be in touch with you sooner rather than later. So at some point in the near future, you'll get notification of who your mentor is going to be, one of the core team from CRA, and they'll be in touch with you to make sure that there aren't any individual issues that we need to pay attention to at this early stage. So, welcome to the scheme. Welcome to cohort 2. There's a school of thought that says the second time you run something through is the best time because we've ironed out some of the bugs, but we've not got to the stage where we've become blasé about how it works, and hopefully you will benefit from that this year. It's going to be great to work with you, and I look forward to that very much, and to putting names to faces, faces to names as we get going, and to progressing professional conversations over the months ahead between now and the end of the academic year. Thanks very much for listening. I hope it's been a useful gallop through. I hope it hasn't been too boring, given that it hasn't got the richness of the other recording. You can access that, as I've already said. My advice, if you do, is to skip the first chunk, which is pretty much inaudible, and move to the later period where at least some of the sound and the video is appropriately connected. Thanks very much, and from the CRA in Wigan, have a good day.